There we are, live on YouTube. Lydia Houston, this mic is all yours, my friend.
Hello, everyone. I am so glad to be back. I am continuing our reading of Living A Course in Miracles by the incredible John Mundy, PhD. He is not only a really wonderful, warm person, but he's just an incredible writer, and he knows how to explain the Course in a way that lay people who are non-clergy, can understand and apply to their lives. And I just am so thankful to have him and his books. So last week, we were reading the chapter from selfishness to selffulness, and we were talking about the various ways we try to be special. And I will recap just the ways that we were discussing before I had to take a break. So, ways of being special. One, egotism. We're special because we're hot. Okay. Number two, we're special because of our opinions. Think politics. Okay. Three, we're special because we're victims. Oh boy, that's a big one, and we're all guilty of it in some form, okay? And number four, and I love this. Number four, we're special because we're spiritual. One of the most subtle means of being special is thinking that we are better than others because we are religious, that God somehow looks with favor upon us in a way that he does not with others. He thus finds us parking spots, tells us how to invest wisely, and gives us strengths others do not have. I just want to say right here that growing up, my mom did not enforce any kind of religious rights on me. We knew that she grew up in a household where her parents were very religious, and they had to go to church, not just on Sundays, but they had to attend Sunday school and go on weekdays to certain events. And my mom never did that with us, which is why I was so open-minded. And the Course was just something that I was so attracted to because I didn't have these preconceived notions. And a couple of times, maybe a guy had a crush on me or something, and he would invite me, at the behest of his parents, to his church, where I would hear things like, "Oh, I am highly favored in the eyes of the Lord," or "Well, God takes care of his devoted servants," whatever. And I just felt like this was a clique, just like in high school, just like in junior high. And I never wanted to be part of a clique. And I also had a problem with seeing the women dressed in fur coats coming to service. Yeah, the specialness, that's a subtle way that the ego uses to make you feel special. And no one ever says, well, I'm special. But you can tell they're thinking it because their lives are going so much better because they go to church and they tithe, and they are really involved in church activities. And I would like to say that that is a subtle way that the ego traps you into feeling special and binding you to the world of illusion. So that being said, let me go on. 4 Catholic ladies are having tea together. One of them takes a sip of tea and says, "My son is a priest, and whenever he walks into the room, all the ladies say, 'Good evening, Father.' The second lady takes a sip of tea and says, 'My son is a bishop, and when he walks into the room, All the ladies say, "Good evening, Your Grace." Wow. The third lady takes a sip of tea and says, "My son is a cardinal." When he walks into the room, all the ladies say, "Good evening, Your Eminence." The fourth lady takes a sip of tea and says, "My son is 6'2", hard-bodied male stripper." When he walks into the room, all the ladies say, "Oh my God." Okay, John Mundy and his sense of humor. According to the Tao Te Ching, if we think we have some knowledge of the Tao and that makes us better than other people, then we are not in tune with the Tao. Thinking one's religion is better than another is a fatal ego ploy. Those who transcend orthodoxy and tradition may think they are better than those who support established institutions. We may think, "I meditate. I'm better than people who don't meditate," or "I eat a clean diet. I'm better than people who eat junk food," or most insidious, "I'm non-judgmental, so I'm better than people who are judgmental." The self you made can never be yourself, capital S. And that's from workbook lesson 95 of A Course in Miracles. I'm nobody. Who are you? So, who are we if we are none of the things mentioned above? A senior minister walks into the chapel of his church, kneels down before the altar and says, "Lord, I am nobody. I am so nobody." The associate pastor walks by and seeing the senior minister, goes into the chapel, kneels beside him, and he too says, "Lord, I too am nobody. I am so nobody." The custodian is passing by and seeing the two ministers on their knees, goes in and also kneels. He too says, "Lord, I am nobody. I am so nobody." The associate minister opens his eyes, sees the custodian next to him, hears what he says, taps the senior minister in the side and says, "Look who thinks he's nobody." Of yourself, you could do nothing. I'm sorry. Okay, of yourself, you can do nothing. Because of yourself, you are nothing. And that is from the text, chapter 8, section 4, paragraph 7, sentence 3 of A Course in Miracles. Mystics talk about coming to a great void and a deep, peaceful emptiness. We might think of the void as the cessation of the ego and an absence of self. It is a peaceful place in which nothing has to happen, where being can just be. Mystics often speak of themselves as being nobody special. Being nobody special also means the remembrance of the truth of being. And being, the Course says, is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real. A Course in Miracles. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell your name the livelong day to an admiring fog. And that is from American poet and mystic Emily Dickinson. When his friend Harrison Blake asked Henry David Thoreau if his adventure by Walden Pond had left him feeling a longing for society, Thoreau answered, "No, I am nothing. Thoreau had gone on retreat to Walden Pond to find himself, that is, to find God within. He could not understand, he said, all the incessant business going on in Concord. He wrote that in 1845. How much busier and seemingly important is today's world? When we stop making up the world, we can see things and enjoy them in their immediacy. There is then no need to change the moment. The mystic is not a projector and doesn't want to be. As English author Aldous Huxley expressed it, our task is not to be thinking, our task is to be thought. Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. English Taoist philosopher Wei Wu Wei. When I quote the above from Wei Wu Wei at various lectures, it also gets a nervous laugh. We laugh because we know it is true. Once at a public dialogue, a man said to the mystic Jean Klein, "Every time I come to hear you, I notice that you seem so clear and relaxed. You radiate peaceful, loving warmth. You seem happy, yet I am always discontent, often stressed out. There are times when I feel quite miserable. What is the difference between us?" Jean said. "You think that you are somebody, and I know that I'm not." Dropping personal history. Oh, this is fun. We gain awareness in the now by dropping personal history. If we could erase personal history, says Don Juan of the Carlos Castaneda books, we would be free from the encumbering thoughts of others. Don Juan pointed out to his student Carlos that he, Carlos, had to renew his personal history daily by telling his family and friends everything he did. If we have no personal histories, no explanations are needed. To express it simply, if you don't have a story, you don't have to fit in. One day, says Don Juan, I discovered I didn't need a personal history. So, like drinking, I dropped it. Don Juan said he knew all kinds of things because, 1, he doesn't have a personal history. 2, he doesn't feel more important than anything else. 3, his death is sitting right there beside him. If we think of ourselves as special, then we may also think that our problems are more important than those of other people. Indeed, the things which establish our individuality in the world are our individual problems. Losing the sense of self-importance, we realize that everyone has the same problem, the experience of feeling separate from God. In describing his mystical experiences, spiritual teacher A.H. Almas says, "I learn a great deal of what I truly am when I am not trapped in the particulars of personal life and history. I am then the unchanging background witnessing." Or as spiritual teacher Ganganji says it, "I am not bound by the story of me." The building of a concept of the self is what the learning of the world is for. This is its purpose, that you come without a self and make one as you go along. And by the time you reach quote unquote maturity, you have perfected it to meet the world on equal terms, at one with its demands. A concept of the self is made by you. It bears no likeness to yourself at all. It is an idol made to take the place of your reality as Son of God. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 31, verse 5, paragraph 1, sentence 3. Our bodies come through different terrains of biology, time, geography, and social circumstances. Therefore, the form is different, but form is only the shell. Content-wise, we are all the same. To the ego, if the form looks good, that is the only thing that matters. Form is absolutely irrelevant to spirit, and only love is real. The less special we think that we are, the better for sanity. Gaining sanity, we find that what happens to our personal self, our hopes and dreams, our hurts and pains, is not a matter of life and death seriousness. Self beyond selfishness is love. It is formless, spaceless, timeless, infinite, and empty. Meister Eckhart used words like desert and barren to describe his experience of illumination. Spanish mystic Saint Teresa of Avila spoke of the still wilderness or the lonely desert of the deity. Yet this is the true country of the soul, a space free from desiring, where the ego cannot reign. While ultimate reality constitutes the true nature of everything, in itself it is nothing. To be nothing is to discover peace, expansion, and freedom from boundaries. Nothing is full, whole, infinite. It is everything, and it is everywhere. It is omnipresent. The self you made is not the Son of God. Therefore, this self does not exist at all. And anything it seems to do and think means nothing. It is neither bad nor good. It is unreal, and nothing more than that. A Course in Miracles, Workbook Lesson 93. If we succeed in finding release from the prison of individuality, what then? That's a good question. There follows in time another second and yet another second. And what do we find in that second? We find oneness. We find the soul, the self, capital S, spirit, capital S, unhampered by the ego. We are eternity. We are love, capital L. This self, capital S, is pure witnessing. It exists prior to time, prior to the Big Bang, and outside of the world of perception. It is not born. It does not die. I have a friend who takes part in a spiritual practice where people work in dyads or pairs of twos. Each participant sits facing a partner, and the partners take turns asking each other, "Tell me who you are." People respond by identifying themselves with their names and their occupations. They may talk about their families and where they live. After they stop talking, the partner asks again, "Tell me who you are." "I'm so-and-so's wife or husband," etc. Eventually, the participants realize that none of the definitions will do. Who they are in truth then must be that which transcends all of these definitions. Although the self that we created is not who we are beyond, above, and outside all the illusions of the world. There is a self, capital S, that we are in truth. This self is a holy child made in God's image, not our own. This self holds the key to inner peace and leads us once again home, capital H. Our greatest happiness comes from knowing we are God's child. It comes in doing His will. Lesson 96 from the Course says, salvation comes from my one self. If there is one self, there are not two. There is no split mind. There is only oneness. I ask you only to stop imagining that you were born, have parents, are a body, will die, and so on. Just try. Make a beginning. It is not as hard as you think. Oh, Indian spiritual teacher, Maharaja. When every concept has been raised to doubt and question and been recognized as made on no assumptions that would stand the light, then is the truth left free to enter in its sanctuary, clean and free of guilt. There is no statement that the world is more afraid to hear than this. I do not know the thing I am, and therefore do not know what I am doing here, where I am, or how to look upon the world or on myself. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 31. Chapter 31 is really pivotal. Section 5, paragraph 17, sentences 5 through 7. Holding on to our specialness, our individuality, is the thing which makes us separate. We hold on to guilt because it confirms our individual identity. The death of specialness is not your death, but your awaking into life eternal. You but emerge from an illusion of what you are to the acceptance of yourself as God created you. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 24, verse 2, paragraph 14, sentences 4 through 5. It is easier to speak of what we are not than what we are. We are not our bodies, our occupations, our church, our city, state, or nation. We are not our race, our clan, or our families. We are not even our thoughts or that which thinks them, our feelings or that which feels them, because thoughts and feelings which come from the ego are not the truth of our being, capital B. There is a great wisdom as we get older in learning to die, in letting go of all the accoutrements of things and eminences as valued by the world. Oneness joined as oneness. While you think that part of you is separate, the concept of a oneness joined as one is meaningless. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 25. The ego is separation, and separation is suffering. Oneness is the state we never left. It is endless, timeless, and ours. It is our eternal home. The memory of God, the Course says, shines not alone. Being is absolutely singular, not manifold. There are not several beings. There is only one God. Beyond the differences of inner and outer, dark and light, good and bad, there is only oneness. When it's cold, water freezes into ice. When it's warm, ice turns into water. When ego rules, mind freezes into form. Awakening, mind melts back into spirit. If the whole is likened to the ocean and the part likened to a drop of water, then when the drop becomes one with the ocean, it sees again with the eye of the ocean. Nothing is lost. Everything is gained. This fragment of your mind is such a tiny part of it that could you but appreciate the whole, you would see instantly that it is like the smallest sunbeam to the sun, or like the faintest ripple on the surface of the ocean. In its amazing arrogance, this tiny sunbeam has decided it is the sun. This almost imperceptible ripple hails itself as the ocean. A Course in Miracles, textbook chapter 18, section 8. What happens when we love? We are lost, but we are found. Matthew chapter 10. Losing ego means gaining the eternal. Losing an illusion is the acquisition of reality. How can a dream be real? How can illusion be anything but an illusion? And what do we lose when we lose an illusion? According to Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger, the overall number of minds is 1. Division is uncertain by definition. It is in conflict because it is out of accord with itself. The ego, being separation itself, thinks of oneness as something outside of itself. In oneness, however, there is no place where God stops and you start. Where God is, there are you. Such is the truth. A Course in Miracles. You believe you can harbor thoughts you would not share, and that salvation lies in keeping thoughts to yourself alone. For in private thoughts, known only to yourself, you think you find a way to keep what you would have alone and share what you would share. And then you wonder why it is that you are not in full communication with those around you and with God, who surrounds all of you together. A Course in Miracles, textbook chapter 15. A study on happiness conducted by a group of social psychologists during the 1990s concluded that there is no one thing that can be said to make us happy. Happiness, they said, was subjective. Nevertheless, the study did find some basic traits of happiness. What made for happiness was nothing of the world: success, youth, good looks, money, or any of what are sometimes envied assets. The clear winner was close relationships. The study said that a supportive, intimate connection with others was the single most important ingredient in happiness. The thing which makes us the happiest is the experience of loving and being loved. The study concluded that the unhappiest people were obviously those who did not experience the give and take of a loving relationship. We literally are one. We are literally of one undivided mind, capital M. Separation is unhappiness. Fortunately, we do not have to be with other bodies in order to experience oneness. See the internet. Sorry. The Course thus asks us, do you really think you are alone unless another body is with you? That's from workbook lesson 76. The Holy Spirit is always with us. As minds are joined, we are never alone. We cannot be separated from the love of God. Watch birds flying in synchronization, or a school of fish all swimming as though guided by one mind. Each bird or fish is doing its own thing, and yet they move as one. When the members of a symphony orchestra play together or dancers dance together, there is an inevitable exhilaration that comes with the profound sense of oneness, joined as one. Truth is so far beyond time that all of it happens at once. For as it was created one, so its oneness depends not on time at all. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 15. Omnipresence, the whole in one. We might think of oneness as omnipresence or presence at all times and in all places. Dropping projection, we experience omnipresence, and omnipresence brings compassion. Omnipresence is equanimity. In equanimity, there is no division, no good and bad, attractive and repulsive. Omnipresence is tranquility, ubiquitous, unbounded, everywhere, universal, and non-judgmental. Oneness is infinite mind. Oneness simply is. As lesson 30 from the Course expresses it, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. Oneness is simply the idea God is. And in his being, he encompasses all things. No mind holds anything but him. We say, God is, and then we cease to speak, for in that knowledge, words are meaningless. Workbook lesson 169. Oneness is endless, timeless, and within your grasp because your hands are his. Workbook lesson, that is textbook, chapter 24. I went to dinner with a friend. We were seated in such a way that you could not help but hear the conversation at the table next to us. It was an older man and his wife. The man had experienced a revelation that day, and he wanted to share it with his wife. He said, "You know what I realized today, honey? We're all just people here." His wife, not being able to connect with what he was saying, asked him if they should paint or wallpaper the bathroom. He tried again. He said, "No, no, honey, listen to me. You know, we're all just people here." And she said, "Should it be blue or yellow?" I realized then that he was sharing his insight with me so I could share it with you. We're all just people here. Chapter 17, above all else, strengthening motivation to change. All good teachers realize that only fundamental change will last, but they do not begin at that level. Strengthening motivation for change is their first and foremost goal. It is also their last and final one. Increasing motivation for change in the learner is all that a teacher need do to guarantee change. Change is motivation. Change in motivation is a change of mind. And this will inevitably produce fundamental change because the mind is fundamental. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 6. A Hindu student approached his master while the master was standing in the river and told him that he wanted to be enlightened. The master reached out, grabbed the student by the neck, plunged his head under the water, and held it there for a couple of minutes. Wow, okay. The student struggled mightily to get free. Finally, the master let go. When the student caught his breath and could talk again, he said, "Why? Why, master, why did you do that?" The master asked, "When you were underwater, what did you want more than anything else?" "More than anything," he said, "I wanted to be able to take a breath." "Then," the master said, "when you want to be enlightened as much as you want a breath of air, you can be enlightened." One of the things you love about the mystics is their profound love and devotion to God. God becomes the main desire of the heart. Ultimately, God is the only thing we want. So why should we not go for the ultimate? We don't go for the ultimate because we put our own dreaming of the world ahead of God. Become in all things a God seeker, and in all things a God finder, at all times and in all places. German mystic Meister Eckhart. The Holy Spirit is here to help us change our minds in a comfortable, non-judgmental atmosphere. To change, we must realize that 1, there is a need for change. 2, the mind can be changed. And 3, there is a quote unquote better way to see things. The holy instant is the result of your determination to be holy. It is the answer. The desire and the willingness to let it come precedes its coming. You prepare your mind for it only to the extent of recognizing that you want it above all else. A Course in Miracles textbook, chapter 18. On May 7th, 2001, I had a tumor the size of a lemon removed from my insides. The day after, I awoke to see the oncologist standing at the foot of my bed. His first words were, "Mr. Mundy, I have to tell you that the cancer has spread." Wow. It had gone into my lymph system. After that, I had to decide if I was going to follow a natural therapy program or was I going to go the way of chemotherapy. I asked Dr. Ken Wapnick his opinion, and he said if I was to do the natural process, I should do it all the way. As with any spiritual discipline, to get results, it must be done all the way. As it turned out, I did both chemotherapy and a natural method, started by Dr. Richard Schultz, who also made it clear, either do this program or don't do it, but don't do it halfway. 11 months later, I was cancer-free. You cannot be totally committed sometimes. That is one of my favorite quotes from the Course. And that's from the textbook, chapter 7. Belief that there is another way of perceiving is the loftiest idea which ego thinking is capable. That is because it contains a hint of recognition that the ego is not the self, capital S. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 4. Motivation and need. A frog fell into a pothole and couldn't get out. Even his friends couldn't get him to muster enough strength to jump out of the deep pothole. Finally, they gave up and left him to his fate. The next day, they saw him bounding around just fine. Somehow he made it out. "How did you do it? We thought you couldn't get out." The frog replied, "I couldn't, but a truck was coming and I had to." A therapist friend tells the story of a client who was suing her company for discrimination and had developed panic attacks and a phobia of driving. When her dog got seriously ill and no one was around, she had to drive him to the vet. From that time on, she was again able to drive. If we need food or water, or we need to go to the bathroom or motivate, our motivation to fulfill our need is directly proportional to the level of our discomfort. When circumstances become unbearable, we are motivated to change. When love falls away from a marriage, when our health breaks down, when debt becomes unmanageable, we might change. We do not, however, need to wait for provocation to make a change. Procrastination is an avoidance of now. Reawakening spiritual vision. You can temporize, and you are capable of enormous procrastination, but you cannot depart entirely from your Creator, who sets the limits on your ability to miscreate. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. A Course in Miracles, textbook, chapter 2. Whenever something tragic, like cancer, a divorce, a bankruptcy, happens, we can either change or regress into despair. We can always slip into denial, projection, dissociation, and addiction. Lesson number 20 from the workbook is, I am determined to see. Lesson number 21 is, I am determined to see things differently. Lesson number 27 is, above all else, I want to see things differently. To be free, I must want to be free above all else. I must be willing to do what is necessary to change. Do I really want the peace of God above all else? Or do I still want to do things in my own way, on my own terms, in my own time, until time runs out? If I have a headache, I take an aspirin and the pain goes away. Something from the outside changed things on the inside. Medicine treats the symptom, but the cause has not changed. My headache is gone. The reason for the headache is not gone. If the mind has not changed, there has been no real change. All physical symptoms are caused by guilt in the mind. The guilty mind then projects a sick body. We can fix the symptom in the body. If, however, the guilt in the mind is not fixed, the same symptom or a new one will reappear. A participant in a workshop on forgiveness suffered from migraine headaches. They started, she said, when she was in a relationship which ended badly. She was continually angry and unforgiving. She realized during the workshop that she did not have any choice. She was going to have to forgive herself and the man in question. She decided to be free of the whole mess, to let it all go. She decided that what happened didn't make any difference, that she actually didn't need to do anything except to let go of her hatred for the man in question. Later, she reported that to her surprise, the headaches had not returned. And having let it all go, She now felt marvelously free. There is a Buddhist story about two monks who were walking from one village to another, and they had to ford a river. There was a young woman standing on the bank of the river who wanted to cross to the other side. One monk offered to take her to the other side by letting her ride on his back as he waded across. He put her down on the other side, and the two monks continued on their journey. The other monk began burning up inside slowly, becoming increasingly incensed, as Buddhist monks were not to touch women. After a couple of hours of silence, he said to his companion, "How could you have let that woman touch you?" To which the other monk responded, "I left her back by the river. You are still carrying her." Learning and wanting to learn are inseparable. You learn best when you believe what you are learning, are you trying to learn, is of value to you. A Course in Miracles textbook, chapter 4. I am going to break right here because it is time to go see my mom. Thank you so much for being with me today. This was so much fun because these later chapters, they really fly by, but they are full of so much information, knowledge. Um, I want to send a special thank you to Dr. John Mundy for sharing this wonderful book with us. I will be with you all again the next week. Thank you so much. Bye for
Thank you,
now.
Lydia. And John he is a funny guy. He is a smart guy. He's a very interesting guy. So,
Hmm.
and he's had a lot of interesting experiences in his life. So I'm
Yeah.
always grateful to hear you read from him. Thanks once again, Lydia, and we will see you next week.